My name is Simbalayo Charles Kinyage. Thank you very much for taking your time to begin your day with us here at Metropole Television. This is Business AM. Catch us live at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. You can also catch me at Kinyage Simba. That is my Twitter handle. Now, we do know that pertinent issues in the country right now around debt are getting addressed by Treasury. And that is partly why we have been receiving loans, and we did get the second batch from IMF. I'll be telling you that figure. But the Ukuru Yatani is saying that public policy and administration is headed in the right way. But is that true though? Are we headed in the right direction? That's the question that I'm asking this morning. One, let's interrogate that. First of all, let's look at exactly where we are in terms of the national government outstanding debt to IMF, because these are the two institutions and the World Bank that are actually calling for these reforms to be undertaken by the National Treasury. That's exactly where we are. But what we do know is that in 2020 and 2021, that number has changed now, that trend is bound to rise up again and look northwards. Fine, and by very big margin. Under that, you ask yourself the question therefore, why are we in a development expenditure trend? And you like to think that it's going to point northwards, but that is not going to be the case, because if you look at that trend again in terms of a development expenditure, you're going to say that that trend is not really that much towards north. Richie, please jump to development expenditure. Thank you. That's where we are. And at 2015 all the way to 2020, 2021, you will see that despite us saying that while we want to develop the country, you will see that in terms of the development expenditure, you'll find that it's sort of hot and cold. That trend is not really a rising trend that is pointing northwards. Somebody would look at it and say, well, there is a concerted effort for us to develop this country. Good. Now, if you look at where we are right now, then you will see that the headlines that we should be getting right now then should be pointing northwards. But this morning, I'll be giving you some of the headlines that are really going to put a keyhole on Ukuru Yatani's promise that indeed we are headed the right way in terms of the key reforms in the country. Let's look at that this morning. Now, in terms of those headlines that we're going to talk about this morning, it is now in public domain that 9 trillion shillings in terms of stalled projects in the country that started all the way from Mwai Kibaki's tenure up to where we are right now are stalled. Think about that. 9 trillion. That is the equivalent of Kenya's economy. Meaning that if these projects would have really come to material now, then we could be talking about different GDP numbers for the economy, but we don't have them because in some sort of way that these projects are stalled. Good. Let's see exactly how the country really plans to spend again that money in 2021 or 2022. Let's see exactly how they're splashing in terms of the big four enablers expenditure. That's what we are. The big four funding has been given 135 billion, affordable housing 14.85 billion, universal healthcare 47.7 billion, manufacturing 18.3 billion, food security 54.2 billion. Let's come back and see exactly where we are in those numbers, because under here they're saying the majority of those projects that are stalled, they are roads, office blocks, we have dams and irrigation projects that are in breach of guidelines that secure financing. So in some sort of way that somebody is sitting somewhere looking at this project that are stalled, breaking those guidelines that are in breach of secure financing. Now, let's see exactly where we are in terms of addressing those areas, because we did know that these key creditors of Kenya's budget 2020-2021 were looking at us and saying exactly that you have to put in reforms that are going to make sure that these projects either are cancelled or are not in breach of secure financing, which makes us this morning look at where we are in terms of the budget increases and the budget cuts in a 2021-2022 financial document. Let's look at that this morning. And we're going to start from the budget increases for 2021-2022. You will see that under that, you will see TSA is really the one that benefits mostly because they've announced they're going to bring in, they're going to hire teachers again in financial year 2021-2022, 6,000 to be specific. Planning, that's a key document because that's the one that's supposed to change reforms, has been given 50. That's a 5 billion increase. IEBC, because we know we're going into general elections, has been given a 1 billion increase. We also do have fisheries, livestock and devolution that has seen an increase as well. So let's see exactly how we are balancing under the cuts section of the 2021-2022. We don't have National Treasury, which you can see has been awarded 155, early education 102, university education from 99 to 95, water from 78 to 77, ICT from 25 to 22, wildlife from 9 to 8, tourism from 6 to 5. Those are the cuts. And you like to think then, when you're looking at it, that this is the government really trying to play those cards on where they need now money to go to spur that economy development. All right, let's look at our budget highlights again for 2021-2022 this morning so we can actually remind ourselves exactly where we are spending our money. Under that, again, you've seen affordable housing, 14, universal healthcare, 47.7, manufacturing 18.3, food security 54.2 billion. Now, the Bretton Woods Institution and the World Bank are saying that 40% of these projects, which the government has been borrowing for since Mwai Kibaki's tenure, in some sort of way became white elephants. Fine. Now, this morning, I want to tell you that we have borrowed 6.8 trillion over 20 years. Now, listen to that. 84% of the loans have been taken up by the Jubilee government that came in power and told us that we are riding under the Big Four agenda that is going to give us the economy development, create jobs, and push our GDP to new highs. Have we achieved that? This morning, we ask by looking at where we are again in terms of public debt. Let's see exactly what that trend is, and we're going to give you those numbers all the way up to where we are as of January 2021. You can see that it's no fear, it's no hidden story, is that our public debt has been rising. Good. Now, that's not the only negative headline that we're talking about this morning as regards where we are in terms of those reforms. Let me give you this new one. Now, National Lands Commission this morning is saying that there is a new development as when it comes to the money that we are going to compensate for the construction of the expressway. Now, they're saying that 17 properties that were earmarked for compensation, wait for this, they belong to the government. So how is it possible that the government is actually paying itself money for land and property that belongs to the same government? Good. They're saying that majority of those, and this is the chief executive Kabale, who's saying that they are road reserves and buffer zones by the Kenya National Highways Authority in the country. Now, NLC's position, it runs counter, all right, to Kenya Director General Peter Mundia last week, who accused the same commission of remaining silent despite numerous notifications about the 17 projects that was supposed to cost the government an additional 2 billion shillings. Good. Again, let's look at that expenditure therefore for development and check on that trend as well, which is going to tell you exactly where we are. And you will see that government has been heavy in terms of that development expenditure. But then they're saying the majority of this money and the questions that have been asked about this money, even in the cancellation of those dams that we do know in the country, is because there were headlines that were not well understood on exactly how the procuring process was done and where that money was indeed going. So the question is, are we really out of the goods when it comes to exactly how the money in the country is spent? At Metropole TVKA across all your social media platforms, we will take those opinions from you. We will take those samples from you this morning, because then you would like to think that Ukur Yatani's promised last week that reforms are underway. You couldn't get these headlines that we're giving you this morning. Let's jump into some of what looks like good news this morning and look at exactly where we are in the banking industry in the country, because Equity is announcing a new stake for the shareholders in the bank. They're saying that any shareholder that has a 12.5 stake will have a right to sit at the board. But funny enough, nobody has a 12% stake in Equity, because we do know the biggest one. The biggest stake is held by Arise BV with an 11.99% stake in Equity this morning. And they're saying that those ones with a 12.5% stake will give a recommendation or have a right to nominate a director. But now those have been capped at a combined 4. So anybody with a 12.5% stake in Equity now can nominate a director, but then they've been capped at just 4. Now, let's talk about good news again from Equity. If you are a shareholder as well, because they're saying they are going to start paying dividends in the financial year 2021-2022, and they're saying they can actually pay 30 to 50% of the annual net profit dividends, which now are currently not fixed. So they're actually trying to fix, because, well, if you go back to exactly how Equity has been paying their dividend, then you will see that they have been paying up to 40% of their net income. Now they want to fix it at around 30 to 50%. Now we do know they have not been paying their dividends for the past 2 years, and this has seen their earnings jump, you can say, by 50 billion or 64% to 127.4 billion. Let's jump and see exactly how Equity performed in the financial year 2020. That's going to give us a pointer on exactly how they're going to go in 2021. You can actually see their total assets at 1 trillion. That's really good. Total liabilities, you can see exactly what they stand, and those total liabilities were sort of accumulated by the loans that were sort of defaulted, also not performing at that time. You can see exactly where the shoulder funds were. All right, let's cross over again and see where they were in terms of the key selected performance indicators for the financial year 2020. Total interest income jumped all the way to 73 billion. We can actually see profit before tax at 22 and profit after tax, that's where it was, 20 billion. Despite them announcing this, they did not declare a dividend, which is exactly why Equity have their earnings jumping by almost 50 billion to 127.4 billion, pushing them as the most profitable bank in 2020. We take a short break.